So I heard you want to retire. Here's why that might be the single worst decision you'll ever make for your soul, coming from someone who has studied the history of human purpose. We see the commercials, don't we? The silver-haired couple laughing on a sailboat. The man in the crisp polo shirt sinking a perfect putt on a sun-drenched golf course. The woman tending to her pristine garden, not a care in the world. This is the promise. The dream sold to us from the moment we enter the workforce. The finish line. The paradise waiting for us after 40 years of toil and sacrifice. It's called retirement, and it's presented as the ultimate reward for a life well lived. But what if I told you that this entire concept, this golden age of leisure, is one of the most effective and beautifully marketed traps ever designed? What if I told you retirement isn't a timeless human aspiration, but a modern, artificial invention designed for a world that no longer exists? And that for many, this paradise is actually a gateway to a psychological crisis of meaninglessness, irrelevance, and rapid decay? Let's rewind the clock. For 99% of human history, the concept of stopping work at a specific age didn't exist. You didn't retire. You were a farmer, a blacksmith, a mother, a tribal elder. You contributed to your community in different ways as you aged. Your wisdom became your work. Your guidance became your value. You were integrated into the fabric of society until your last day. There was no finish line, only a continuous process of living and contributing. The idea of ceasing all productive activity and dedicating the last 20 or 30 years of your life to pure leisure would have seemed bizarre, even irresponsible. So where did this idea come from? It wasn't born from some deep human need for rest. It was born from German politics in the 1880s. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, was facing a rising tide of socialist sentiment. To quell unrest and pacify a workforce demanding more rights, he introduced the world's first state pension system. It was a brilliant political move. But look at the details. The age of retirement was set at 70. At that time, the average life expectancy in Prussia was around 45. It was a social program designed for a tiny fraction of the population who managed to outlive everyone else, and even then, only for a few years. It was never intended to fund a 30-year vacation. Then, the Industrial Revolution supercharged the idea in America. In a factory, a human being isn't a well of wisdom. They're a component, and components wear out. The assembly line mentality created a need to cycle out older, slower workers for younger, faster, cheaper ones. Companies began to offer pensions as a way to gracefully and efficiently move older workers off the payroll. Retirement wasn't a gift to the worker. It was a tool for corporate efficiency. It was a system that treated human beings like machinery with a planned obsolescence date. We internalized this. We accepted the premise that at 65, a switch flips. That you go from being a productive member of society one day to being a professional relaxer the next. We organized our entire lives around this premise. We spend 4 decades in a career, often one we don't even like, enduring the stress, the commute, the meetings, all fueled by the promise of that one glorious day when we can finally stop. We build our identity around our job title. I am a lawyer. I am a teacher. I am an engineer. We spend our lives climbing a ladder, and we are so focused on reaching the top, we never stop to ask what happens when we get there and have to climb back down. And that is where the trap springs shut. The first casualty of retirement is your identity. For 40 years, you had a simple answer to the question, what do you do? You had a title, a role, a purpose defined by your profession. The day after you retire, that answer is gone. You are no longer a director, a nurse, a foreman. You are a retiree, an identity based on the absence of what you once were. This creates a profound vacuum. The sense of being needed, of solving problems, of contributing to something larger than yourself vanishes. And a human being without a sense of purpose is like a ship without a rudder, adrift in a vast, empty ocean. The second casualty is your structure. Your work life, for all its faults, provided a framework for your days. It gave you a reason to get up in the morning. It dictated your schedule, your social interactions, your daily challenges. When that structure disappears overnight, you are left with a terrifying amount of unstructured time. The first few weeks feel like a vacation. The first few months might be a novelty. But soon, the endless expanse of empty days can become a source of immense anxiety and depression. The freedom you craved becomes a form of imprisonment. The third, and perhaps most dangerous, casualty is your mind and body. The human organism is not designed for prolonged idleness. It is an anti-fragile system that thrives on challenge and stress. Your brain is a muscle. When you stop challenging it with new problems, new learning, and complex social interactions, it begins to atrophy. Study after study confirms this. Retirement is a significant risk factor for cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. The phrase "use it or lose it" is not a cliché. It is a brutal neurological reality. Your body follows suit. The lack of a daily routine often leads to a more sedentary lifestyle, which in turn leads to a host of physical ailments. The golden years we dream of often become a rapid acceleration of the aging process. We don't stop working because we get old. We get old because we stop working. Now, I can hear what you're thinking, but I hate my job. I'm burned out, exhausted. I deserve a break, and you are absolutely right. The problem isn't your desire to escape a soul-crushing job. The problem is that we've been presented with a false choice, either a lifetime of miserable labor or an empty paradise of idle decay. This is a profound failure of imagination. The real solution isn't to plan your escape. It's to build a life you don't want to escape from. The goal isn't to stop working. The goal is to stop working at something that drains your soul and start dedicating your energy to something that fuels it. This is the concept of an integrated life, a life where the lines between work, passion, and purpose are so beautifully blurred that the idea of retiring from it becomes absurd. Think of the 80-year-old master carpenter who still spends a few hours a day in his workshop, not because he needs the money, but because the smell of sawdust and the feel of wood in his hands is the essence of who he is. He isn't working. He is expressing himself. Think of the 75-year-old author who just published her most acclaimed novel. She isn't working. She is sharing her wisdom. Think of the 70-year-old consultant who mentors young entrepreneurs. He isn't working. He is building a legacy. These people have not retired. They have refined. They have distilled their life's experience into a pure form of purposeful activity. They have shed the parts of their careers they disliked, the bureaucracy, the meaningless tasks, the toxic politics, and have kept the core of what gave them meaning: mastery, creativity, and contribution. This requires a fundamental shift in how we view our lives. Stop thinking of your life in two acts, the drudgery and the reward. Start thinking of it as one continuous, evolving mission. Your mission might change. It might evolve from raising a family to building a company, to mentoring your community, to creating art. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that you always have one. A reason to get out of bed that is pulled from a deep sense of purpose, not pushed by the fear of a boss. So how do you do this? You start now. You don't wait until you're 65. You start cultivating skills, passions, and projects outside of your primary career. You build a purpose portfolio, just as you build a financial portfolio. You invest in learning, in new experiences, in relationships. You ask yourself not, what job do I want? But what problems do I want to solve? What value do I want to create? Your job is what they pay you for. Your work is what you were put on this earth to do. The tragedy of the modern world is that we have convinced generations of people to sell 40 years of their life's work in exchange for a paycheck and the false promise of an empty paradise. The retirement industry sells you a dream of endless beaches. But a man can only sit on a beach for so long before he gets bored. A mind can only play so many rounds of golf before it craves a real challenge. The human spirit is not designed for a finish line. It is designed for the race. It is designed for the struggle, the growth, the climb. So let them have their pension plans and their 401ks. You must plan for something more. Don't just plan for your retirement. Plan your life's work. Build a life so engaging, so filled with meaning, so aligned with your soul, that the idea of retiring from it becomes the most ridiculous, most terrifying thing you've ever heard. The goal is not to reach a finish line. The goal is to build a race you never want to end.